Aloha, and welcome to this evening's forum of OHA trustee candidates. My name is Leimomi Khan, and I am chair of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. Co-host this evening is Ken Farm, Hawaiian Affairs Caucus representative to the State Central Committee of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. The Hawaiian Affairs Caucus is an entity of the Democratic Party of Hawaii and seeks to address issues of self-determination, promotion of Hawaiian cultural practices and sacred sites, pono economic development, protection of Hawaii's natural resources on the Aina and in the Kai, housing, health, and education, and so much more. We do this work through educational forums and legislative advocacy. Ken?
This evening, we are happy to host OHA Trustee Candidates Forum in partnership with Olelo's Vote Informed program. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs election is nonpartisan, and all registered voters in the state of Hawaii can vote for the OHA trustee positions. At the general election on November 6th, we will all be asked to vote for 5 trustees to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, i.e. 3 at-large trustees, 1 Oahu resident trustee, and 1 Maui resident trustee. In this session, we are pleased to feature 3 of the candidates for at-large seats, incumbent Le'au Isa and candidates...
No. E kalamai. In this session, we're pleased to feature one of the candidates for the Oahu seat, that is Kalei Akaka. Her competitor, Esther Kia'aina, declined due to a previous commitment. We also feature the candidates for the Maui seat, Carmen Hulu Lindsay, a sitting trustee, and Keaumoku Kapu. At 7:15, we will feature 3 of the candidates for the at-large seats, incumbent trustee Le'ahu Isa, and other candidates, William Aila Jr. and Brendan Kale'aina Lee. We also invited incumbent trustees Rowena Akana and John D. Waihe'e IV, and one other candidate, Faye Hanohano, but we did not hear back from them.
Our facilitators this evening are Rayton Varas and Kainoa Kamavia Riego. Timekeeper is Melody Aduha. All members of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, Rayton and Kainoa, iholo mua.
All right, mahalo. Aloha candidates, welcome and mahalo for being with us this evening. We begin this evening's program by inviting each of you to make an opening statement of 2 minutes. We invited first Ms. Kalei Akaka, candidate for the Oahu seat, to make her opening remarks, followed by Keaumoku Kapu and Trustee Carmen Hulu Lindsay, both candidates for the Maui seat. Ms. Akaka, please.
Aloha. Aloha everyone, my name is Kalei Akaka and I'm running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Oahu Island seat. Mahalo to our Democratic Party of Hawaii, the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, to our moderators here tonight, to all in the audience, to the Olelo community media, to all tuning in, and also mahalo to all of you who have voted, who to shaka and vote akaka, and mahalo in advance to those who will. And I also want to say mahalo to my ohana, to my family and friends for all your support, for my Akaka Army, my Akaka for OHA team. You're going to hear a lot of different ideas from each of our candidates about what they would like to do. And what I would like to do is focus on getting people to work together. This is the time in which we stand, we rise, we move forward together as a unified voice. One voice. And I think the key in doing this is for OHA to develop working partnerships in which we work with the city, we work with the state, in which we work with the federal government and other organizations. I am dedicated, I am committed to improving the lives of our people. So I humbly ask for the opportunity to continue my ohana's legacy of service. And so no matter what island or district you're voting from, please remember to shaka and vote akaka.
Mahalo Kalei. Mr. Kapu, your opening remarks.
E velina mai kako o Keaumoku Kapu koino na kaula mai o ia mai Lahaina mai. My name is Keaumoku Kapu and I'm from Lahaina. Today is still known as the capital of the kingdom. I'm a proud resident of that area. I live on the smallest percentage that is recognized today under the Kuleana Act. My properties are Kuleana lands, and I like to definitely keep it that way. My whole drive based upon my identity and character as a Kanaka in today's society is always being steadfast for the Native Hawaiian constituents out there of what we need as a basis of an identity for us all. I have served for pretty close to almost 20 years on boards and commissions. I have gone to the forefront of many issues that affect Native Hawaiians as well as the general community. My whole life has been to be steadfast on discussions that has a lot to do with not being complacent in today's society. My whole drive is based upon the values of yesterday and how we can incorporate those values, the traditional resources, and the generational knowledge that needs to be passed down from one generation to the next. My whole identity as pertaining to why I decided to run for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is because I think we need good leadership at the forefront of every issue. Not at the office, but at the forefront to be with the people that had voted on the representative or trustees into place. So that's the reason why I'm here. I have good ideas. A lot of people like to talk about the issues and problems. I'm here to talk about solutions. So mahalo no.
Mahalo. Trustee Lindsay, your opening remarks.
Aloha mai kākou. My name is Carmen Hulu Lindsay, your Maui trustee for the past 7 years, and it has been my honor to serve you. I am presently the chairperson of the Resource Management Committee of the Board of Trustees, in which all lands, legacy and commercial, and all of the money from our investment portfolio, ceded lands, and commercial real estate revenues are my kuleana in overseeing its management. The experiences I have gained has definitely given me the skills to continue serving in this policy-making role. I have seen our successes and I have seen our weaknesses. I have had the wonderful opportunity to walk with our kanaka from Mauna Ala to Iolani Palace in observation of the 125th anniversary of the overthrow of our queen. I have slept with our kanaka on the slopes of Mauna Kea. I have walked the streets of Chicago with our kanaka in protest of a foreign entity attempting to exploit our language by trademarking the name Aloha Poke. I have visited Indian reservations in Seattle and Minnesota to review their governance model as it may be related to a possible Hawaiian governance. I have testified before the Water Commission for increased water flow for Nawai'eha in Maui. I have testified before the Maui County Council to stop sand mining on Maui for fear of desecrating more iwi kupuna. I also cherish the joy of helping our people through the millions of dollars given by OHA for education, health, culture, economic self-sufficiency, housing, land, and water. There is much still to do. I am better prepared than ever before to apply myself to the challenges that face us. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Trustee. Thank you.
Mahalo, everyone, for your opening remarks. This evening's program has been structured around a set of questions that were prepared by the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus Executive Committee. Our intent is to help our viewers get to know your personal values and your positions on the effectiveness of OHA, fiscal management responsibility, the relationship with the legislature and the governor, governance, and delivery of programs and services to Native Hawaiians, and, if there's time, your position on a constitutional convention. Additionally, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one of their opponents a question. For all questions, each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer, and then we'll wrap up with providing closing statements of 90 seconds by each candidate.
So let's now turn to the first set of questions where we discuss OHA's organizational structure. We've read in the news media about articles critical of the OHA Board of Trustees that give the impression that OHA is, quote unquote, dysfunctional. What are your views about OHA, its organizational structure, and its board of directors? 1 minute will be allowed to each of you to respond. Let us first begin with Mr. Kapu, followed by Trustee Lindsay, and then Ms. Akaka.
Yeah, sure. One of the toughest questions basically is being dysfunctional. I think the issue at hand of a lot of things that has been escalating in the general community pertaining to federal recognition, Mauna Kea, all those kinds of other issues out there has been troubling because we don't have the right leaders at the forefront. I think by having the right leaders at the forefront to address every issue, especially Mauna Kea, the Mauna Kea issue is a hard issue to tackle, especially when you're talking about when Kanaka start talking about the degradation of our resources are being overmanaged or mismanaged in certain ways. And I think the leadership from OHA not being dysfunctional, but being on top of the situation as a kako issue. There's a lot of issues that they face and a lot of personalities, clashes that had come about. So,
Mahalo.
That's my views.
Trustee Lindsay?
Thank you. I actually don't think that we're dysfunctional. We're quite active when we disagree on issues, and there are many issues in our Hawaiian community. We actually all get along, and we talk very civilly to each other. Sometimes we raise our voice just like you do in your homes because we consider ourselves ohana. But we have an excellent staff that services us. And they are very on top of all of the issues and represent the board at the different meetings and come back and solicit our opinions and our approvals. We are very, very careful on the issues that face our people so that it doesn't escape us. I believe that we are very functional.
Mahalo. Ms. Akaka?
Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
So we've read in the news media that is critical of the OHA Board of Trustees that give the public the impression that OHA is quote-unquote dysfunctional. What are your views about OHA, its organizational structure, and its Board of Trustees?
Well, I think that OHA has so much potential, and a lot of what we can do is in building partnerships and being an example for our people. Again, so much promise. But I think that with any organization, any well-founded organization that has existed for many, many years, for instance, like the Queen's Health System, Kamehameha Schools, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, that if we're wondering if we're doing it right, then we simply need to ask ourselves, look at the mission, asking ourselves, are we meeting those goals of the original mission? And if we're not, let's go back to those basics. Let's go back to the drawing board. That's how we can do it. And also keeping in mind that the current days that we're living in and applying that knowledge to it as well. It's about finding balance.
Okay.
And doing it with the spirit of aloha. Very important.
Right. Okay, building on your opening remarks and your response to this question, what Hawaiian values would you say should define the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in carrying out its role and responsibilities for the Native Hawaiian community? What values should drive the direction of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs? 1 minute will be given to each of you. Let us begin with Trustee Lindsay, followed by Ms. Akaka, followed by Mr. Kapu.
Thank you. Some of the values I see as we're required to have is respect, ho'ihi. As Kanaka, we are very diverse, which I feel is wonderful, as our diversity speaks for our intelligence. As a trustee, it is important to remember that we serve all Kanaka, not just the ones who agree with us and support us. Respect is an important value as we need to respect the views and needs of all in order to make progress for all. Imina'awau, to see truth, enlightenment. As a trustee, it is imperative that we do our due diligence when fact-finding. Although as Kanaka we tend to rely on our na'au when decision-making, the na'au combined with ike makes for a more efficient process. This is why I am a strong supporter for the audit. We need to know accurately where our money is going and where we can improve in order to best serve our Kanaka.
Okay.
And our last item is aloha.
Ms. Akaka, please.
Mahalo for that. I too think that it's very important is the very basic value of aloha. It is so important. This is the gift that we can give the rest of the world that nobody else can. You can go to anywhere in the world, talk to anyone not from Hawaii, and when they ask you, where are you from? And you tell them Hawaii, everybody says, oh, Hawaii, paradise, I love it. And that's because we have the spirit of aloha. That's something that my grandfather, U.S. Senator Daniel Kaka, he did every day in office, and that's something that he taught me, that's the one thing that we can offer the rest of the world. So as trustees, that's the example that we can show our people, that we can work together, that we can get along, that we can focus on what is right to find solutions to empower ourselves. Mahalo.
Just a couple.
I've always been a kind of a grassroots person on a lot of the things that we've done in the Maui community. So I've always been at the forefront to listen to a lot of the concerns that our Kanaka Maoli people have out there. And, you know, when I start talking about identity, we're in a cultural identity crisis as Native Hawaiians. So because of that, how are we going to lift the bar up to give our people more hope in our society, knowing that we have the right leaders at the table discussing what needs to be discussed to make sure that we can bring those issues to the forefront. Once you start relying on the resources of the general community, then you start getting people to be more involved and more respectful for each other. So like for myself, I've always been a traditionalist by getting into the kupuna, by finding advice from our kupuna out there on how we can put the fabric of today's society together by the knowledge that was passed down from generational knowledge to the appeal. We're losing that bridge. So with the values that I have and the traditions that I hold, we can weave that fabric once again together for the right cause, for the right reason.
Okay, mahalo.
Mahalo. Turning now to OHA's fiscal management responsibilities. The Hawai'i State Constitution provides that the OHA Board shall exercise powers provided by law to manage and administer the proceeds from the sale or other disposition of the lands, natural resources, minerals, and income derived from whatever sources for Native Hawaiians and Hawaiians, including all income and proceeds from the pro rata share or pro rata portion of the public trust. This year, the State Attorney General issued 2 reports of their audit of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Both reports found the need for improvement in the management and administration of OHA funds. Specifically, the AG found problems with the approval and accountability process for spending OHA income. What is your reaction to the 2 reports made by the Attorney General? Ms. Akaka, do you find their assessment fair or unfair to the work done by OHA?
I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about audits. Audits happen all the time, and audits can be a good thing. I think what this audit brought to light is that what we really need to focus on is having clear infrastructure to what is allowed and what is not allowed, so we know how to do things moving forward. It's as simple as that.
Mahalo nui. Mr. Couple, your thoughts?
I concur with Akaka, and I think there needs to be, and I don't know how this ever came about. When the audit came out, you know, I was kind of to a point of, I'm not surprised, because there isn't rules set in place. Yeah, when you start talking about the allowances that are awarded to the trustees. For myself, you know, being given that opportunity to provide funds for our Native Hawaiian constituents would be my priority, and to make sure that, you know, there's an ad hoc committee that is set up to make sure that they can look at those things, and to, you know, you got to have somebody in there to kind of line everybody up to make sure that they don't go off course. So my immediate reaction was, I weep that audit and I found some discriminating things in there. So, like she said, all audits are done for specific reasons, but for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, there's a lot of disagreements on my part as what had occurred.
Mahalo, Mr. Kapu. Trustee Lindsay.
I believe the state audit is fair. OHA has come under fire regarding concerns raised about management and spending of OHA resources by both the trustees and staff. When I became the Resource Management Committee chairperson 2 years ago, I became aware of some of the problems raised in the audit. We have begun implementing the audit recommendations, giving priority to those areas where there were inadequate oversight of fiscal allocations. Under my leadership, the Resource Management Committee and the Board of Trustees voted unanimously for an internal audit focusing on fraud, waste, and abuse. The second audit initiated by the trustees is examining activities and disbursements of our people's trust assets.
All right, so we're now going to ask you folks a few questions about the OHA's interaction with the governor and the legislature. So the state's obligation to Native Hawaiians is firmly established in our state constitution. How the state satisfies that constitutional obligation requires policy decisions that are primarily within the authority and expertise of the legislative branch. One of those policy decisions is the amount to be transferred to OHA from the Public Lands Trust. What strategy would you advocate for to get the state to update the annual amount owed to OHA due to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs? We'll give our first speaker 1 minute. Mr. Kapu, go ahead.
Okay. We haven't gone anywhere from when this thing was established to the 5 City Land Trust. And the priorities that were supposed to come of that, health, housing, as well as education. So with discussing matters with the governor or the legislation, we should start talking about more than 20% of the city land revenues. We should start talking straight off the top. Let's start 100%, yeah, or 50%. Why only 20%? So we got to get the right negotiators at the table. We got to talk about the right issues on how we're being degraded as Native Hawaiians, that we are accepting such a minimal today, that we got to start thinking not 20, 80, but 80, 20%. Then we negotiate from there with the governor. And I'm pretty sure he feels pretty mutual about us. We're our race, we're the host culture. We should deserve more than just the 20% revenues that is coming from the legislation. Not stuck at 20% and getting less than that. We've been accepting crumbs. So now it's time to step it up to get the right people at the table and start negotiating at that terms.
Okay. Trustee Lindsay, your mana'o.
Thank you. The 20% is dictated in the Hawaii revised statutes. It's by law that that's what the Hawaiians get. Why we are not getting this full amount is very frustrating, especially for sitting trustee. We have gone to the legislature every year asking for the fair amount. The response that I heard from the senators is that they see that OHA is wasting money. And they're feeling that since we waste money, we don't need any more money. And this is directly from their mouths. So perhaps we need to prove to them that we are definitely in need of more money for our people who have more needs. We have homeless people, we have people that have health problems that we need to assist. And although we give a lot of money in our grants, we still need more. We can do so much more, you know. So we're working on it, and we're still going to go back every year to be able to ask for our share.
Okay, mahalo. Ms. Akaka?
Thank you. A lot of what Trustee Hulu Lindsay said, I agree with. The amounts that we are given each year that is such a small percentage because it is an underreported amount of what is owed to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And really, it's to the people of Hawaii, the native Hawaiians, who are truly losing out here. Again, there's so much potential. If OHA is not able to meet the task at hand to take care of the things that are really important, affordable housing, health and wellness for our people, good education, being able to find good jobs, these are all programs that OHA is unable to properly service if we are underfunded. So some of the solutions in which how we can go about this is create better presence at the legislature, have better presence with the governor, build on those relationships. Mahalo.
Okay. Our next question actually speaks to that. The support of the governor and the legislature are important to fulfilling OHA's mission. What's your take on OHA's current relationship with the governor and legislators? If not good, then how do we change that? 1 minute for response. Let's begin with Trustee Lindsay.
I think we have a great relationship with the governor. He's been willing to listen all the time, and I do believe that we have good relationships with our legislators. What I think we need to do is probably the trustees need to be a little more active with creating relationships with them. Sometimes when you stay away so long and you just send the staff, the legislators don't take us seriously. You know, we need to be there. I'm there a lot, but we need to all be there so that they see how important this money is to our people. So I don't see anything wrong with our relationships, but I think we can do more as trustees.
Okay, understood. Ms. Akaka.
Again, I fully agree with that. It comes down to presence again. It comes down to relationships. So as Native Hawaiians, we cannot do all this alone. It takes partnerships, it takes relationships. We need to have a unified voice across the board with administration, with the trustees, physically be there at these hearings, encouraging our Native Hawaiians, our beneficiaries, to bring voice to the issues, to create that gentle reminder to our legislators about what's important, what needs to get done, and also encouraging those who are not of Native Hawaiian blood that want to support us to jump on board and say, hey, you know what? We need to do this, and we need to do this now. I think that's how we do it.
I've always been a strong advocate when it came to testifying in front of the legislation as well as the county and the state. So being at the forefront of every issue, if it's development, land resources, ocean resources, yeah, I get frustrated many times because when I'm at the forefront, I don't see the agencies there. I don't see the leadership that's supposed to be, that was basically voted in to serve in that capacity to be the voice for the people. I've advocated for over 20 years. I'm still advocating today. And I'm not getting paid for the things that I do. And that's not the reason why I'm running either. I want to make sure that every issue is covered when it comes to the land and our ocean resources. So being partners with the government, you know, when we formed Act 212 of the Ahamoku Council system, we're founders of that. When the legislation came out and fully supported it in the House, then it went to the Senate. You know, it was by understanding how the rules are, where now it's time from a bottom to top management system, not a top-down management system. And the governor understands that, and he's open to those ideas.
Mahalo. Let us turn our attention now to governance. A key goal of the OHA strategic plan from 2010 to 2018 is to facilitate a process that would give Hawaiians the opportunity to create a governing entity that would define Native Hawaiians as a political rather than racial group. The benefit of such a governing entity would be its ability to provide Native Hawaiians with greater control over their destiny as they move towards self-determination and self-sufficiency. We spent at least 50 years trying to find an acceptable path to self-governance. The warrior leaders engaged in these activities are slowly passing. Those who live want to see self-governance achieved in their time. While continued education is helpful, Is there someone among you with the bold vision of a process to bring the various factions of our community together, to kuka, agree, disagree, but move us forward to attain self-governance in the immediate future? Ms. Akaka, could you start?
Thank you for that question. I've had the great fortune of growing up in a family that taught me so much in how to do this. Having my grandfather as a guiding light, working so many years to fight for our people, to give us this opportunity. And I believe his work is not done, and that we're here to stand together to continue his life's work for our people. When I had asked my grandfather to find more clarity as to what the Akaka bill, what that meant for our people, he told me, Kale, really what it comes down to is productivity. When our Hawaiian people are able to rise up, be self-sufficient, be productive, then all of Hawaii benefits. That's what it is. It really comes down to productivity.
Mahalo for your answer. Mr. Kapu.
Having an opportunity to go to Washington to basically represent your grandfather in identifying what is important when you start talking about ocean resources. And when you start talking about the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which is a covenant under federal laws, you know, these kind of things is very pressing for us, but knowing that we have to understand these things, because whichever form of government we decide to select, it all boils down to how we're going to involve the general community of the Native Hawaiians and the Kanaka Maoli. For the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, I feel it's none of their business to be mingling in the affairs. When you start talking about self-governance, that's the people's responsibility, or should be the one to help them steer the process to get to that point. So when we start talking about incorporation of this and incorporation of that, we got to talk about the generational knowledge, and I'm going to bring that up again. That's really important because it's a part of the fabric and our identity and character as Kanaka Maoli, so we can go forward in the right direction and not the wrong direction.
Mahalo nui. Trustee Lindsay.
I also believe that OHA should not get involved. We were involved and spent $7 million on trying to create something out of Kana'i'olovalu, and it never happened. We can add to that 10 years of being in Congress, trying to get that passed. But I think that our people have to find a way to come together. It cannot be a portion of the people, like we did in Na'iaupuni. There was a handful of people. We need all of our Kanaka, and we need for them to come forward together, and it has to be in a democratic way. You know, if we vote on a particular type of governance, then everybody have to fall in place so that we can holomua together. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. We're going to just keep fighting forever. So I'm as frustrated as most of our people are.
Mahalo. Recently, we witnessed a Texas case where a law governing Native American children was struck down as unconstitutional based on race, in violation of the Fifth Amendment, Equal Protection Guarantee, and the confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh, appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court, a judge who had openly characterized federal protections for Native Hawaiians as unconstitutional in articles he wrote. What are the implications of these events on Native Hawaiian programs? Let's start with you, Mr. Kapu.
You know, this thing came about years ago in 1993, and it was Senate Bill 8, when all of a sudden our legislation started to look at things that were based on being unconstitutional for Native Hawaiians, where we was at the verge of losing Native Hawaiian programs. We're at the verge of losing a lot of things that was only basically for the Native Hawaiians. So, you know, our world that we live here, and people got to realize there's borders that are set up. And those borders are not being identified, especially when you start talking about Kavanaugh. You know, that guy is clueless as pertaining to us being indigenous, which means we're not a part of the United States. And it's been proven by President Clinton when he signed that apology bill, 103150, public law. And identified by Patsy Mink, by Abercrombie, by Akaka. All of them was there present. So let's start with that. Let's start with the issue. Everybody is worried about whether or not Kavanaugh being appointed to the Supreme Court. Let's bring those issues up again, and whether or not he had valid reasons to destroy or even look at destroying Native Hawaiian programs that would benefit more for us.
Mahalo, Mr. Kapu. Trustee Lindsay.
I think that Judge Kavanaugh is in a different part of the government from, let's say, administration, which I believe our programs are given to us by administration. The only time that Kavanaugh would probably get involved is if there's challenges to our rights, you know, and then it'll be very scary. Hopefully, with all the bad time he got to get confirmed, that he'll remember that the people will come to him if he's not fair with Indigenous people.
Malanui Trustee, Ms. Akaka.
I think that a lot of his works have proven that he would dismantle our rights as Native Hawaiians. He would dismantle the rights of all Indigenous people of the United States. So what we need to ask ourselves is, are we prepared? Are we prepared for Hurricane Kavanaugh? What are we gonna do to make sure that we're ready to go? Are we gonna have an AHA? Are we gonna come together as a people to say, hey, you know what? We have all these goals, we have all these opportunities, but we have somebody that's gonna take this opportunity away from us. What are we gonna do about it?
All right. So we've invited each candidate to ask the other two candidates a question, which must be the same and must not be of personal nature. The intent is to allow candidates to distinguish their views from that of their competitors on issues of importance to Native Hawaiians. May we begin with candidate Trustee Lindsay. Please state your question for response by the other two candidates, who will be given 1 minute to respond, which you may also express your views not to exceed 1 minute.
My question is basically about the independent audit that is going on right now. My question to my fellow candidates here is, if misappropriation of funds is discovered in this audit, what would you as a trustee think of how it should be handled?
Me?
Mr. Couple?
Well, basically, if I was given money to make sure that the money was supposed to be for the benefit of Native Hawaiians who were in trouble, who needed the money, programs that were kind of, I think the money would specifically be for that purpose. I would follow what was mandated that specifically be for that purpose. I think the problem lied when a lot of the mismanagement of funds was unclear as pertaining to where the money was allocated to. So for me, I mean, that's kind of a hard question, unless if, you know, I appropriated funds, yeah, that I couldn't cover for, then that would be the issue. But for me, I don't think I would mismanage or misappropriate funds basically for what it was meant for. That's what I would.
Okay. Ms. Akaka, your response to trustees?
As the Oahu Island trustee, as trustees together, that it is as simple as being law-abiding, following the rules. If we find that there are issues within the organization, we ask ourselves, what are we going to do to make this right? It's as simple as that. Finding solutions. Doing it better the next time.
Okay. Mahalo. Oh, excuse me. Yes. Ms. Akaka, do you have a question for your other two panelists?
Sure, yes. I think, well, perhaps each one of you can provide an example or two on how you feel as trustees we can work together to bring more harmony and aloha into OHA.
Starting with me.
Yes.
Yeah, getting new people to the table. Simple as that. Getting new people to the table, addressing the issues at the forefront, finding lokahi once again, building the capacity of us, we understanding what stewardship is all about. What just the language of basically being a trustee. I don't think I'm deserving of the language of being trustee because I need to gain everybody's trust, first of all. So when you start talking about those kinds of values, that counts a lot when you start stepping into this seat to do your whatever fiduciary duties you need to gain the trust from the people.
Okay. Trustee Lindsay, do you have a response to Ms. Akaka's question?
Yes. I was going to say I already asked. I do have a response. I don't feel that there's any, again, the word is dysfunction at the board table. I think we all aloha each other. I think there is definitely a feeling of ohana. That doesn't mean we agree with each other. And that's what our public seems to see, the disagreement among us. But there is respect and there is love. So I think that we need to continue. And as I mentioned earlier, respect, aloha, all that is part of getting along on a board. And the most difficult thing about our board is the sunshine law. We cannot talk to each other, more than 2 people anyway, away from the board table if it's not agendized. So when you come to the board table, you don't know what the other person is thinking. Already you're in disagreement. Why didn't you tell me? I couldn't. The sunshine law prevented me from telling you. You know, so that's the difficulty and the difference between the legislature and our board.
Okay, well, Mr. Couple, do you have a question for?
Yeah, I have a question. I gotta put my makani on. Yeah, basically, I guess this could be for both candidates in certain ways. So my question is, what are 3 accomplishments on your own accord, and not as a trustee, which people should vote for you?
Let us start with Trustee Lindsay.
Well, I think one of my strongest strengths is being a mother. I have raised my children with the Hawaiian values. And today they are practitioners of our culture, tu kumuhula. And, you know, when I hesitated to say that in a forum last week, my daughter was very disappointed with me. And she said, Mom, do you think that we became what we became by ourselves? You know, it was you that set the example for us. So I said, I never thought of it. I didn't look at it that way. I just figured they did it on their own, but they assured me that it was my leadership as a mother that made them be what they are today. And I'm so proud of what they are today because they have really, really perpetuated our traditional values. As far as other things, maybe not as important, but I have many. I'll stop there.
Okay, Ms. Akaka.
Well, perhaps what I can share on that is that I think the life that I've lived, it has prepared me for this role to meet the challenges of a trustee in being a part of a trio with my parents in providing spiritual guidance to our people throughout the world, applying that spirit of aloha, applying those important traditional Hawaiian family values, in continuing my ohana's legacy of service through education. My grandfather worked as a teacher. My uncle Alan worked as a teacher at Kamehameha schools. I worked there at Kamehameha schools, continuing that legacy of service and education. That's something that can never be taken away from us. Doing that, continuing the legacy of promoting the spirit of aloha, that it is a real thing to solve everyday problems. But that's what I would like to share.
And that's I think the heart of a true trustee. And but not only that, but how you can go out and start doing your due diligence and basically take whatever courage and whatever will that you have to go out there and work for the people that you serve. You know, I've done that for a long time. I'm still doing it now. And I think the most important issue when you start talking about accomplishments mean what you're doing for other people out there. That's the main accomplishment. By making sure that people can rely on you, that they will know that you're at the forefront of every issue, that you're at the forefront and not in the office, sitting there trying to figure out where we're going from here. I think to be a strong advocate, yeah, you gotta have the ohana values. And I'm all about the candidates for sharing them on all about their accomplishments in life. What about the accomplishments of the people that rely on those constituents that have mandated to make sure that we are provided a fair due process as Kanaka Maoli today? That's my accomplishments. I have a lot of them. My record states for itself.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
We're going to turn our attention now to programs and services. Native Hawaiians are among, of course, the largest population of homeless. The state has been grappling with this issue, which is not a surprise to anyone. What kinds of programs and services would you advocate for to help Native Hawaiians who are homeless and to assure that they have access to affordable housing? Ms. Akaka, 1 minute to you.
I think it goes, again, back to the different topics we covered before. It comes down to partnerships. It's working with the city, it's working with the state, it's working with the federal government, it's working with other organizations. It's creating that presence at the legislature, having that relationship with legislators, with our governor, on all levels. And I think that it comes down to the question on the public land trust again, where we're getting our fair share of the monies to be able to have more programs, to partner, to take our people off the street and put them in good homes.
Mr. Kapu?
I've been a strong advocate for affordable housing, especially in Maui, especially here in Oahu. And I've asked a question to the state, when you start talking about Native Hawaiians and what is out there basically for Native Hawaiians, yeah, then you can start talking about what is unconstitutional. When people start asking, how come only the Native Hawaiians are providing houses that are affordable? So working with the state, trying to identify where the problems exist. Yeah, if you're talking about Native Hawaiians of 50%, well, when you're talking about housing, they're already taken care of. Now, OHA is mandated and out there for that specific reason that as an agency under the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, they can provide housing for Native Hawaiians of a minimal percentage of 49%. So I think that's where our successes can come from, getting the right people at the table, because when you start advocating about these kinds of things in the legislation, you can start coming upon challenges from people from the legislation that would feel that it would be unconstitutional. So OHA would be the solution to that.
Trustee Lindsay.
We have many homeless people in the back of our building, our OHA building, and we have many homeless people down in Kaka'ako. I think one of the most needed programs would be for mental health. I see a lot of the people, not necessarily only Hawaiians, but a lot of the homeless people, they obviously look like they need some mental health help. And I think that's very critical, because those people do not listen to the homeless administrators that come by and want to assist them. They want to take them and put them into shelters. They won't go, you know. So I think that's a very difficult situation. I believe that there are people that want help and need help. I believe also that the governor has set up a system so that they can be put into shelters almost immediately. That's my take on it.
Malanui.
Yeah, speaking of healthcare, this next question pertains to healthcare and education. Looking to the future, what challenges and opportunities exist to advance the health and education of our people? Would you like to continue in your response?
Well, I would want to advocate very strongly for healthcare because many of our people cannot afford health care. Even with Medicare for our kupuna, it's still difficult for them to buy their medications. So I believe very strongly, and I'm very happy that one of our strategic rules are that we have health where we can help our people. We have given many grants out to the different health agencies like the Queen's Hospital, where our people can go for help. But I think health and education will always be a challenging subject matter for us because those are absolute necessities.
Okay, mahalo. Mr. Couple.
Our kupuna don't understand this language when it comes to how we're going to get them to even trust the system when it comes to health care. We've been giving all these kind of amenities to our kupuna. The first thing is a lot of kupuna don't even know how to go there or who to turn to get them there to get provided for health insurance. We've been in a tailspin, and I only say this because my father, he's 76 years old. I mean, he's 86 years old right now, and he doesn't want to go to the doctors because of the high costs of, just the medication. So, like for us, we try to turn to traditional methods because my father feels that, this government that is provided for us doesn't necessarily provide for those types of remedies when you talk about medication and health. So, I'm the one that basically got to drive my dad to those areas sometimes, and it's hard getting him out of the car because he doesn't trust the system on how more they're going to say that he has a bill that he hasn't paid for. So that's fearful for a lot of our kupuna. How are we going to get those programs to go to them, not for them to go to the program?
Mr. Kaka, you have 1 minute.
Mahalo. I think the Office of Hawaiian Affairs has done a fantastic job in providing funding to different organizations throughout the community. Statewide, like our trustee said, with the Queen's Health System, my uncle Dr. Gerard Akaka, working in the system, he has done a good job in providing those services to our Native Hawaiians through Vai'anai, all the way to Kona side. So this is something that we must continue. And again, it comes down to underfunding from the state. We need to have the proper funding so we can do more. We need to ask ourselves, what more can we do? But how can we do it? It takes money, but it also takes good partnerships.
Okay, mahalo. Okay, so we've reached the end point of this kuka. Mahalo for joining us tonight for a very thoughtful conversation. We want to invite each of you to now make your closing remarks not to exceed 90 seconds. So let's begin with Mr. Couple, please.
Yeah, mahalo. I have been, once again, I need to remind that I have been a strong advocate at the forefront. I've served in the Cultural Resources Commission for the County of Maui, appointed by the mayor, although we have our differences today. Then I also served in the Maui Lanai Island Borough Council for 8 years. 4 of those years, I was the chair. I served in the Native Hawaiian Historic Preservation Council for 9 years through the Board of Trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and I also served in the federal level. So when you talk about policies and all these kinds of things, you got to understand the rules of engagement first. In the federal level, understanding what happens from there all the way down to the county level and how the problems exist pertaining to the policies that that is basically forced upon us. So because I've served in the capacity of those commissions for many years, and also my successes pertaining to my jury trial quite title adverse possession, I've received those lands back, ancestral lands. I feel that, I have the qualities of stepping to the forefront and addressing those issues because I understand the policies, I understand the rules, and I understand the problems that exist within there and how we need to get that to the forefront of all the trustees, so we all have a basic understanding and the way and where we need to go for the benefit of our Kanaka Maoli constituents out there. So this is what I offer, and this is what I have to bring to the table. So when you see my name on the ballot, vote kapu. Mahalo.
All right, mahalo. Trustee Lindsay, your closing remarks.
Well, I want to mahalo the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus and Olelo for this opportunity to share my thoughts with you who have tuned in to Olelo TV to familiarize yourselves with the candidates running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs this year. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs is one of the most important institutions in Hawaii because its actions on behalf of its beneficiaries have far-reaching consequences for all of us who call Hawaii home. It is my hope that I may continue in this OHA leadership role and offer the continued balanced perspective and combination of pragmatism and visionary judgment. I humbly ask for your vote in the general election so that I may retain my seat on the OHA Board of Trustees. All OHA candidates must run statewide and are elected by all the voters. Mahalo.
Ms. Akaka.
Mahalo. I am dedicated, I am committed to meeting the challenges of a trustee, to improving the lives of our Native Hawaiians, of our people, by applying the wisdom of our kupuna, by bringing in a fresh perspective into OHA, by applying my diversified experience, applying my experience in education, applying my experience in community relations, applying my experience in agriculture, and applying my experience having worked at the legislature in both the State House and State Senate. But what I will bring to you all as your Oahu Island trustee, I will be the trustee that when it comes time to fight for what is right, it really comes down to character, tenacity, integrity, and I hope to do that for you all. So, but, well, actually, I'll need everybody's help. And I think it's important for everyone to know that they can vote for OHA. So I'm on every single ballot through the state. Every island, every district can vote for me. So please remember to shaka and vote akaka. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui to all of you. Without question, the work of the Board of Trustees for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is daunting. OHA trustees are responsible for formulating policies relating to Native Hawaiians and Hawaiians and to manage and administer the funds that it receives on our behalf. How well trustees carry out their kuleana impacts the well-being of Native Hawaiians and the programs and services provided to them, many of which benefit the community at large. The behavior of trustees impacts upon how the governor, the legislature, and the people of Hawaii view the effectiveness of OHA. As such, we encourage all voters to vote informed, to take into account what you've heard from our candidates here this evening, and to be sure to be thoughtful and cast your vote meaningfully. Brother Rington?
Yeah, just mahalo again to all of our candidates. I think all of us really appreciate each of you stepping up to the plate and offering voters a choice, bringing your passion and commitment to Native Hawaiians and all of the people of Hawaii. So we want to just mahalo our viewing audience in TV land and also here in the studio. We also want to remember, we also want to remind you to vote in this coming general election on November 6th. Lastly, mahalo to Olelo staff and to Royal Kitchen, who supplied refreshments for our panelists. Please visit the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus website at hawaiianaffairs.org and tell your friends about this Olelo program, which should tonight's event will be aired several more times. Please stay tuned for commentaries immediately following this program with Hawaiian Affairs Caucus members Ken Farm and Rebecca Soon. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Aloha! Thank you so much for joining us backstage. I am Rebecca Soon, a member of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawai'i.
I'm Ken Farm. I am the representative to the State Central Committee, Hawaiian Affairs Caucus.
So basically, he's being humble, but basically the Central Committee, the State Central Committee is essentially the governing body of the Democratic Party of Hawai'i. And the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus has 2 representatives that represent the interests of Native Hawaiians on that governing body. And Ken is our non-female rep.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. But Ken also does a lot of awesome community work, advocating for affordable housing, education. I don't know, the list goes on and on. Yeah?
That's fine.
All right. And I don't know, I'm just around and I have a lot to say about things. So I think that's how I got on here. But thank you so much to everyone for tuning in and for Talking Story. This is going to be this is the second forum, actually, that the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus put together, yeah?
Yep, yes it is.
And with our fearless leader, Antile Momi Khan. Are we going to hear from her?
Leader. I think we are going to hear from her, I think, from the second part of this.
Perfect. So Antile Momi, yeah, she sort of pulled this all together, but with the support of the leadership of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, many of whom you met earlier, some of our awesome moderators out there as well. But what do we want to talk about right now? We kind of want to get a little bit of reaction to some of what we just heard, friendly reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then maybe talk story a little bit just about Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Maybe where we can start is just talking a little bit about, for those that are maybe new to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs or who are new to issues around Native Hawaiian rights, we can talk just a little, maybe a bit about some framing. So essentially, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs was sort of birthed out of the 1978 Constitutional Convention, and it was essentially a way to try to provide some empowerment and right some, historical wrongs, as many people often put it, but especially to create a body that would be responsible for caring for the corpus of rights and the land that's held in trust for the Native Hawaiian people, and to be really the trustees of that trust. And essentially, Article 12 really is the part of the Constitution of the state of Hawaii that talks about what the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is, what their kuleana is, and then Section 5, which we heard a little bit from Kainoa earlier, really delineates some of the roles of what the trustees are a little bit. Talk to us a little bit, though, about the role of the trustees and a little bit about maybe some of what we heard tonight.
So I think, when people think of trustees, one of the things that we need to, understand is a trustee is different from a legislator. A legislator, they create laws, right? The trustee is responsible in a fiduciary way, in a money way, of where that money goes that they get and how it's allocated to the for the benefit of Native Hawaiians. So that's a little bit different from the legislature, who creates laws, has these committees, and then votes on it, and then it goes to the governor, and so on and so forth. So I think that's something that we have to take into account.
Obviously, though, we appreciate that distinction, and we heard, though, from some of the candidates tonight about how the work of the legislature does impact the work of OHA, and also especially the work of whether or not OHA has the resources it needs. We heard a little bit from some of the candidates about the pro rata share. Essentially, the pro rata share being the Constitution stating that 20% of the revenues from the public land trust should go to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs for the well-being of the Native Hawaiian people. I think that the numbers, you can go to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs website, $394 million is essentially what all the revenue is. So basically, all these lands generate about $394 million in revenue. From that, 20%, super quick math, would be about $79 million. But what OHA is actually getting is usually around the order of about $15 million, which is just 3%. Right. 3 to 4%. And so I think that's some of what we heard tonight. But did we hear about how we can get that pro rata share? Did we hear about what that relationship can look like with the legislature in order to enforce that requirement?
Well, I think one of the things that we, like I mentioned, is that it is that fiduciary responsibility, but that doesn't discount them going, and as well as you, who is watching this, and other people who are interested, of going down to the legislature and really telling them, that this is for the benefit of Hawaiians. When they talked about those issues of like homelessness and whatnot, a lot of those do affect Native Hawaiians, and I believe that if this money was given, we would have the ability to do a lot more than what we have right now.
Awesome. So, you know, we talk a little bit about what the kuleana is of trustees. What did we hear from them tonight about sort of what they think should be the values that guide? Because, I mean, we're all, I mean, let's be real, Hawaiians, we care a lot about our core values,
yes, we
right?
do.
It's really important. We always talk about, like, oh, I can, you know, feel from your now whether or not you feel good about somebody. But there's, I mean, there's a lot of validity to that, right?
No, I
and
agree.
I think one of them actually even talked about, you know, working from your now.
So, you know, we look at the three different things that the different candidates said. So the first one is going to be is Hulu Lindsay. She talks about respect, right? And Ho'ihi. And respect, and where that comes into play with being a trustee toward the community. But we also had, you know, talking from Kapu. You know,
Keamohu Kapu.
Yeah, Keamohu Kapu. And what he talked about was, and I really want to emphasize this, generational knowledge of talking to the kupuna, getting insight from them, because, you know, we still have aspects where there's a modern component to what's going to go on, right? But we never want to forget where we come from, right? And, you know, we look at it just like in family, you know, we're talking about our family trees, right? And the same thing applies when it comes to something like this, is we want to know where we come from, that family tree, but also that generational knowledge, and how does that incorporate into the modern contemporary world, right? And I think that there's a lot for that as well. And then we also for candidate Akaka, who talked about more collaborative effort and partnerships as well. So I think these are the three different types of things that are going on per the different candidates in terms of the values and surround them.
And I do want to I want to let people know, we were actually talking about Mo'oku Auhau before. Before we segued in. And in fact, okay, he thought this was a joke, but he wrote his name down. No, I'm going to read it. Stop.
No.
Okay,
it's a really long name. Yeah,
Um,
because I know I probably forgot some parts of it. So.
He maybe forgot.
I have to look at the birth certificate again.
But no, but I mean, the importance of family and tradition and culture, I mean, that's undeniable, right, in our community, and having a leader that works from that space is undeniable, right? So how do voters translate that? You know, for people who are thinking about, okay, what does that actually mean for what this is going to do for our community? How do voters translate what they're hearing candidates saying, and whether or not that's going to work in the boardroom?
So, you know, I think one of the things that we look at, and, you know, this is bringing back the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus from the Democratic Party standpoint, is that, you know, there's an emphasis that we had originally on you know, kai and aina, just water and land. But there was a part that we wanted to add in there that had interest and has a lot of effect too as well. It's understanding the importance of healthcare, housing, and education, and how that in a synergistic process works. Because if you have that foundation there, then we can build upon that, right? Those are the survival in terms of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. We look at what's on the ground floor. That is our foundation, aside from, as we talked about, you know, the mo'oku auhau, the different values, and how do we build up to that actualization that we're looking for.
Yeah, and so, you know, translating Maslow's hierarchy of needs for me is like, what's like fundamental rights, right? And what are those fundamental rights?
At least for most of us, it's, you know, roof over our head, food on the table, right? I think that's what most families kind of look at and worry about. So if we look at, you know, in terms of Native Hawaiians, you know, we can talk about, you know, we're about 14 to 16% of the state population. 14% of us, maybe no more than 17%, have university degrees. That doesn't translate that everybody, you know, that everybody needs to, you know, have a university degree, but what are we going to do in terms of vocational training, right? What are we going to do in terms of housing? Is just single-family homes the way to look at it? Or are there other types of avenues that we can look at as well? For healthcare, I think that was very important, bringing up for healthcare, because we have, you know, strong indications that Native Hawaiians, in terms of diabetes, dialysis. I have a family member where that's, you know, something that they have to deal with is dialysis. So how do we go about, you know, introducing either a healthier lifestyle and incorporating, like we talked about, that knowledge from before into the contemporary mindset?
And so we talk a little bit about delivery of service.
Sure.
Right? And so the Office of Hawaiian Affairs has a budget every year that it's responsible for basically spending for the betterment of Native Hawaiians, right? Yes. And that's the kuleana. That's the kuleana that trustees hold. All these people that are vying to be, candidates to be trustees, whether they're incumbents or whether they're here, running to hold one of these seats. That's the kuleana, right? It's how do we spend the resources, and even beyond that, how do we advocate, right, for the betterment of our community, betterment of the Native Hawaiian people. And so talk to us a little bit, Ken, about, we talked a little bit before we started, came into this segment, just about the idea of delivery of service. So, for example, are we, is OHA directly going out into community and providing services, which I think is what some people think OHA should be doing, or is OHA providing resources through other organizations, be them charter schools, DHHL, nonprofits, that maybe people don't even realize the money coming through is coming from OHA?
And, so the way that, and they talked about the structure of OHA, and one of the biggest problems that I've seen and I've talked to other people about was they go to OHA thinking that OHA is going to solve their problem, right? I'm going to go to OHA, hey, I have this problem, it's housing, whatever it is, and I'm going to go to OHA and they're going to have these services that are going to help Hawaiians, right? But the way OHA was set up was it is more about grant giving to other organizations than it is for actually providing those direct services. So that is something that I think really needs to get out there to understand. It's not that you're just getting, you're given the runaround. And I also firmly believe, and I brought this up before through another member of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus that I've definitely been advocating for, is more type of case management, where they take Hawaiians who could fall into these different programs. I think this is something we should look at.
This would be OHA staff.
This would be OHA
team members, yeah.
Team members who understand case management and walking people through a process. If it means them, calling them with the person who's going to provide that service, and then following up with them, making sure that service is being provided. I think that guiding hand along the way is going to be very important when it comes to them seeing what OHA does for them.
Yeah.
I mean, on our side, we see sometimes where this money goes to. Other people do not, and I don't expect them to actually know that. So, it's incumbent upon us to say things like this, like, hey, and look at like where is that gap? Where's that gap of services, and how do we kind of meet that gap? If the services are there but the outreach is not there, then how do we get that outreach? If the outreach is there but people don't understand how the services are being provided, then we also have to show that as well. And by having case managers, if we're talking about this, getting this pro rata share that we're talking about, that obviously we are due, but I think that's something that should be part of that calculation as well, providing that case management services.
And that would potentially, in your vision, latch on to sort of what's happening now, which is Office of Hawaiian Affairs empowering community-based programming and community-based
I think people have the ability, they don't have to be locked into it, but if they request a case manager that follows them along the way, I think that would be something that they should definitely look into.
So one of the things that was brought up during this past session was the question of what OHA's role is in empowering our community and providing resources and tools and support to support a future governance. And we know there's lots of places where we have resources that were put in trust for a future Hawaiian government. And so even understanding OHA's role to eventually transition into a separate governance entity. So I guess, if my question would almost be, and not necessarily, I'm just wondering if you have other thoughts on this, but our question would be to the next panel maybe, is if it's not OHA's kuleana to be part of that conversation or to support our community giving resources for all pathways, well then whose kuleana is it?
And that's a good question. I mean, that was something that was brought up, and please, if you haven't seen and this is recorded, go ahead and watch and see what the candidates say. I do believe, I don't recall what candidate was mentioning that, but it should not be the job of OHA to do so. But I think that's something that we have to take consideration. Is that the job of OHA? Is that the job of you? And we talk about advocacy, we talk about getting people out there to vote. This is one of the things that I think that should get people out there.
Okay, we're going to talk more about it next segment after our next panel of candidates are up. But voting, right? I mean, we have to vote. We're here because we know how critical it is for Hawaiians to vote. Ballots are out in some communities. I know that Maui, some of my friends in Maui have already voted.
We have same-day registration, so get out there and vote.
Okay, so we're going to talk about it more after next segment, the importance of voting. Hawaiians are voting. Okay, I'm going to put in that plug right now. We're civically engaged, and we as a community can make a difference. So we're going to the next panel. We're going to be hearing from 3 more candidates. And just mahalo, turning it over to Auntie Leimomi and I believe Auntie Juanita.
Yes,
yeah?
absolutely.
Okay, right on.
Aloha,
Mahalo.
everybody.
Aloha, and welcome back to this evening's forum of OHA trustee candidates. My name is Leimomi Khan, and I am chair of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus. Co-host this evening in this session is Juanita Brown Kawamoto, who is our secretary for the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus. The caucus is an entity of the Democratic Party of Hawai'i and seeks to address issues of self-determination, protection of Hawaiian cultural practices and sacred sites, pono economic development, protection of Hawaii's natural resources on the Aina and in the Kai, housing, health, and education. We do this work through educational forums and legislative advocacy. Aloha, Juanita.
Aloha Leimomi. This evening we are happy to host an OHA Trustee Candidates Forum in partnership with Olelo's Vote Informed program. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs election is nonpartisan and all registered voters in the state of Hawaii can vote for the OHA trustees' positions. At the general election on November 6th, we will be asked to vote for 5 trustees to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, 3 at-large trustees, 1 Oahu resident trustee, and 1 Maui resident trustee. In this session, we are pleased to feature 3 of the candidates for the at-large seats: incumbent trustee Le'ahu Isa and candidates William J. Aila Jr. and Brendan Kale'aina Lee. We also invited incumbent trustees Rowena Akana and John D. Waihe'e IV, and 1 other candidate, Faye Hanohano. We did not hear back from them. Earlier, we heard from Kale Akaka, who is running for the Oahu seat. Her competitor, Esther Kia'aina, declined due to other commitments. We also featured the candidates for the Maui seat, incumbent trustee Carmen Hulu Lindsay and Keaomoku Kapu.
Mahalo, Juanita. Our facilitators this evening are Rayton Varez and Kainoa Kaumeheiva Rego. Timekeeper is Melody Aduha. All are members of the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, all very cherished members, and we thank you for doing this work for our caucus. Rayton and Kainoa and Melody e holomua.
Okay, mahalo. Aloha candidates, welcome and mahalo for being with us this evening. Let us begin this evening's program by inviting each of you to make an opening statement of 2 minutes. Let's first begin with Trustee Le'ahu Isa, to be followed by Mr. Bill Aila, and then Mr. Kale'aina Lee. Trustee, please.
Aloha mai kako, everyone. Because I've done this before and most people know who I am, I wanted really to read a story because 2 minutes is a long time. So instead of talking about myself, and Hawaiians, they're not too keen on talking about themselves, so I wanted to talk about Al Shim, a very, very wise and a mentor to me. When I first ran for office 25 years ago, he told me this story titled, "Whose Job Is It?" This is a story about 4 people, everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody thought somebody should do it, anybody should do it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job, and everybody thought, well, anybody can do it, but nobody wanted to step in. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody, and nobody did what anybody could have done. I'm not motivated by political power or by money in doing this and running for this race. I got in 3 years ago on a Women of Prayer, and it's been a learning experience for me. Being an educator, you know, I'm into learning, educating, and listening to people. I'm here to try to help solve the problems of our beneficiaries because I feel like nobody else is really trying to do it. I commend my fellow colleagues here for stepping up to the plate and doing it. I will do what's best in the interest of the people and not what's in the best interest for me. I want to be a responsible person to you and to nobody else. In the upcoming election, I'll be attending other events, and I ask for your support. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Trustee. Mr. Aila.
Aloha mai kākou. It's an interesting time to be a native Hawaiian. There are many, I think, challenges that are ahead of us. We live in interesting times where we have a current board of trustees that the perception out there on the street is that it's unable to move things forward. It's unable to act in a way that is amiable. The recent audits have indicated that there are some issues that need to be resolved and that there are some problems that can be turned into solutions and implement better things for the future. This is the backdrop to why I'm running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. I've been approached by many of my friends and many in my family who have said, you know, we think that you have a unique skill set, being the former director of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the deputy director at the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, managing a boat harbor for 24 years, various types of activism. How about you go do something and help make things better? And so with the support of my wife, the full support of my wife, who I want to thank, Melva, and the support of my family, the step to come forward and to, you know, put yourself out there for the criticism that we all are sure to face and have been facing, but also to, with a genuine desire, and there's everybody at this table has a genuine desire to try to make things better for the Lahui. And that's really why I think we're all here, and this is why I'm running. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Aloha mai kākou. My name is Brendan Kale'aina Lee, and I am running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Trustee at Large. Some 40 plus years ago, I sat on Moloka'i in the arms of my grandmother, Mary Vahine Okalani Lee, who was one of the founding kupuna members of the Protect Ho'olawe Ohana, and watched as the modern day of Hawaiian activism came about. Through my years growing up, I watched my grandmother fight for Native Hawaiian rights and for access to parts of Moloka'i that previously were held away from Native Hawaiians by Moloka'i Ranch. I watched my maternal grandmother help found the Pearl Harbor Hawaiian Civic Club, of which both my parents are founding members of as well. I'm a founding member of the Now Appeal program with the Pearl Harbor Hawaiian Civic Club. Both my parents are former presidents of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, and I am the current sitting second vice president for the association. I am also the president of the Kamehameha Schools Alumni Association. And in 2016, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a remarkable group of 125 plus Native Hawaiians who came together in Manawili to work together collaboratively, and for the first time in our people's history since the overthrow, to agree and to help take a giant step forward for our people when they drafted the Constitution of a Native Hawaiian governance. And as that chair, I have a proven track record of collaborative leadership that the boardroom at OHA has severely been missing all these years. And I look forward to talking more with you folks for the rest of the evening. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui to each of you for your opening remarks. To reiterate for you folks and for the audience, this program has been structured on questions prepared by the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus Executive Committee to help viewers get to know you, your personal values, and your positions on the effectiveness of OHA, its fiscal management responsibility, its relationship with the legislature and the governor, governance and delivery of programs and services to Native Hawaiians, and if there's time, your position on a constitutional convention. Additionally, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask one question of their opponents. We'll wrap our show up with closing statements of 90 seconds to be made by each of the candidates.
Okay, so let's first begin with our first set of questions that pertain to OHA's organizational structure. We've read in the news media articles that are critical of the OHA Board of Trustees that give the impression that OHA is quote-unquote dysfunctional. What are your views about OHA, its organizational structure, and its Board of Directors? We would like to give 1 minute to each of you. Let us begin with Mr. Aila.
Okay. Well, what gives the impression of being dysfunctional is when OHA trustees sue each other in court, when they openly criticize each other in open meetings. That's what gives the impression. I heard Hulu Lindsay talking earlier that there is some cohesiveness and some discussion and the willingness to put differences aside. We have yet to see that. The structure of OHA is such that the board is supposed to make policy, the administration is supposed to implement that policy. My impression and other folks' impression is that the board sometimes gets a little too micromanaging, and that you have sometimes had the impression is that there are 10 administrators. I would like to see the board go back to making policy and allowing the administration to implement that policy.
Okay. Mr. Lee, your response.
I would agree with some of the things that Bill said. I also heard in the earlier segment this evening about love at the boardroom table. To my knowledge, people that love each other don't sue each other. The organizational structure is supposed to be that the trustees set policy and that administration implements that policy. Not only do I see what Bill sees, that there seems to be 10 administrators there, but the person who's supposed to be administrating sometimes is making up policy because issues need to be addressed, but the boardroom isn't acting the way it's supposed to act, and no policies are coming out. So without any guidance or policies to lead them, administrators are going out on their own because action needs to be taken. And that needs to stop. Not that I'm faulting the administrators for trying to move actionable items forward, but if the boardroom isn't going to make the policies that need to be in place to give them the work that needs to be done, then there's nothing that else can be done. So that the way it's structured and supposed to work needs to be re-implemented.
Okay. Trustee Ahulisa.
He's the only incumbent sitting here. I can see why the other two didn't show up. To be accused of being dysfunctional, I've only been there 3 years. When I first got in, I heard about how OHA was like how both of you are kind of describing it. And I was amazed. As soon as I got in, I said, I'm for the repeal of Act 195. And one of the trustees looked at me right in front of everybody at the Board of Trustees meeting and said, why don't you quit already? Why do you want to come in here if you want to? I said, excuse me, I don't want to fight. Because I find when you try to butt back, it just gets worse. I said, thank you, I'm sorry, but I ran on the platform of repealing Act 195, and I just let it go at that. And he didn't know what to do. It was like their thing in there is to fight. If you don't respond and you don't give back, they really don't know what to do. He was like speechless, and he apologized to me later after the meeting. So it's gotten better. I can speak from 3 years ago to now. It's gotten better. Okay. Thank you.
Wow. So let's actually continue along this line of thinking. So building on these remarks, what Hawaiian values would you say should define OHA in fulfilling its mission, its role, and responsibilities to the Hawaiian community? We'll give each of you 1 minute to respond. Let's begin with Mr. Lee.
Well, what Hawaiian values? I mean, we could go down the list of what everybody usually lays out when it comes to corporate talking, right? Kuleana, aloha, malama. But Hawaiian values go far beyond just that. Hawaiian values at its essence is looking within yourself and what you yourself bring to help better everyone around you. And it's not just about what is best for me. And that's what I have seen missing from the boardroom.
Okay. Trustee Ahuisa?
Hawaiian values. What I remember from, I'm from old school, so my grandma, my tutu raised me. We were kind and gracious. We didn't fight. So when I got in there, I'm thinking, gee, how did the trustees come to this point? What happened to Hawaiians being kind to each other? As soon as I get in there yelling at me, do you know the day I was elected, I went in there to try to sign my personal papers. All the doors were locked. They were at some party next door at Dole Cannery, and I couldn't get in. I thought, is this the way they treat a new elected trustee? That already set the stage for me on what to expect. I see 60 seconds goes so fast. I'm kind of like looking at her and trying to answer the question, but that told me a lot when all those doors are locked. They didn't tell anybody, no sign. Can you imagine beneficiaries going there, catch the bus from Waianae into town and be locked out and no sign saying, we're at a party at Dole Cannery. Thank you. So understand why the public said that about, criticizes OHA. Thank you.
I think, okay, so if I had to choose one value, it would be kuleana, and that kuleana would rise to the level of suppressing egos, and that's one of the issues that I believe that we have at the table now, that everybody puts too much emphasis on their egos and their plans and their beliefs and their systems, and it's not about we, and it's not about us, and it's not about ours. So kuleana forces you to take yourself outside of your ego and to look at what's best for all the people that first are around the table that you're making the decision for policy or for spending or for whatever's the issue at hand. But it's that kuleana that is recognized by the trustees now that now goes out and extends to the decision-making and how it's going to impact the lahui and the beneficiaries of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Malamui, let's turn our thoughts to OHA's fiscal management responsibilities. The Hawai'i State Constitution provides that the OHA Board shall exercise power as provided by law to manage and administer the proceeds from the sale or other disposition of lands, natural resources, minerals, and income derived from whatever sources for our people, including all income and proceeds from that pro rata portion of the public trust. This year, I'm sure you've heard, the State Attorney General issued 2 reports of their audit of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Both reports found the need for improvement in the management and administration of OHA funds. Specifically, the AG found problems with the approval and accountability process for spending OHA income. What is your reaction to the 2 reports made by the Attorney General? Trustee Ahuisa, do you find their feedback to be fair or unfair to the work done by OHA?
Investigated by the FBI, and I am named in there. I'm kind of reluctant to answer anything that involves AG's office and the, So I pass to my colleagues. They can have my minute.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Aila.
Since we're not subject to attorney-client privilege, I think the opportunity that the board has based upon the findings of the audit, the opportunity for improvements, the opportunity for inflection or reflection is what we need to focus on. So yes, things need to be improved. How do we improve them? I think the current Board of Trustees has taken the first couple of steps at making policies better. I think we need to go beyond that. I think ultimately every trustee needs to have that inner voice that says, I might want to do that with the trustee allowance, but I'm not going to because that doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. It doesn't sound right. And so what you do when nobody's looking is really what counts.
Mr. Lee.
Do I think the AG reports are fair? They are and they're not. They're fair in the fact that they point out severe discrepancies and deficiencies in the boardroom and in decision making and accountability. It's not fair in the sense that some of the things that are pointed out as being poorly managed money is just a misunderstanding by the AG's office on what OHA's mission is. A perfect example that Bill usually gives is the $3 million to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which the AG said is poorly spent. That's mandated by law that OHA has to give that $3 million to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. That being said, the good thing about the audit is that it shows where and how OHA can improve. And like Bill said, the current board has taken steps to move in that current direction, but more needs to be done. And the last thing I'll say, because I see that it says Powell, is the question that trustees also should ask each other, because you hear this all the time, should it matter that I spent all this money because that person was a beneficiary? Shouldn't be, did I help this beneficiary? It should be, did I help the beneficiaries, as in plural, as in all.
Brother Ethan.
Okay. Let's actually continue and continue to talk about OHA's interaction with the legislature, with the governor, and the executive branch. The state's obligation to all Native Hawaiians is firmly established in our Constitution. How the state satisfies that constitutional obligation requires policy decisions that are primarily within the authority and expertise of the legislative branch. One of the policy decisions is the amount to be transferred to OHA from the Public Lands Trust. What strategy would you advocate to get the state to update the annual amount of income and proceeds from the trust owed to OHA? 1 minute for response. Let us begin with Mr. Aila.
I think you need to gently remind legislators, especially those who run the funding committees, that language is in the Constitution. And even though there is a separation of powers, that they have the authority to appropriate, that within the case of OHA, that there is this perception of 20% of the city land revenue needs to come to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Some estimates say that that estimate is as high as $70 million per year. So we need to remind legislators of their duty to appropriate via a constitutional amendment that created the department. They also need to be reminded that on the Department of Hawaiian Homeland side, there is this constitutional requirement to provide sufficient sums. And each one of us and our friends need to remind them. That's the strategy. Only when they hear from the Lahui, including non-natives, will they respond.
Wow. Mr. Lee.
4 magic words that were in your introduction of the previous question. As provided by law. So people argue that the legislature doesn't give OHA the money that it's deserving of that 20%, but they forget to mention as provided by law. Perfect example are the airports. Most of the airports sit on ceded lands, and we should be getting money from that. The legislature passed a law saying that the airports are exempt from that, so we don't get any money from the airports. What OHA can and should do for the future to better this is education. And why I say education is until we get more Native Hawaiians in the legislature, until we get more Hawaiians in positions of power, and until we get people that are sympathetic to Native Hawaiian plight, this isn't going to change. OHA can lobby all they want, but legislators are going to take care of their own projects and what's best for what they perceive as the majority of their constituents.
Trustee Ahuisa?
Okay, just to add, I'm just going to add to what, because it's such a short time, just to add what my colleague said, interaction with the governor and the legislature. Constitutional amendment, they owe us 20%. Do you know that when I talked to Mark Dunkerley, when he was trying to get his airport, that task force, He didn't even know that we didn't get any revenue from the airport. He said that's ceded land. So people know that's ceded lands, but they don't know we don't get it. Clinton's apology says take away the airport revenue. If we could, education is the key. If we could educate our legislators, because they don't even know, they don't pay attention. I was a rep, I didn't know that. All of these, Waikiki Yacht Club, all of these, you also said the harbors. You mentioned the last thing we had about the Department of Transportation. If people are educated, I bet they would step up to the plate instead of just criticizing OHA. Another thing I want to say is because of the OIP, the Sunshine Law, we cannot talk to each other. So you have 9 trustees, can't talk to each other more than 2. So we can't really get things done to talk about this and how we're going to collaborate and go to the ledge and do something. They separate us, they try to break us. I'm sorry, but that's what the public or whatever the legislators or the governor wants us to do, just break Hawaiians apart. That's the way I see it being in their 3 years. Okay, mahalo.
So the support of the governor and the legislature are critically important to fulfilling OHA's mission. What is OHA's, in your take, in your personal opinion, what is OHA's current relationship with both entities, and how do we repair or improve that relationship that we're not doing now? Let us begin with Mr. Lee. Your 1 minute.
I find it interesting that you use the term repair. I don't think OHA has a bad relationship with the governor or with the legislature per se, but the governor has a job and promises that he has to keep, and the legislature has promises and a job that they need to keep. And it goes back to what I said for the last question. It's not about us bettering our relationship with them. We just need to get people in there that have a relationship or are willing to have a relationship and a working relationship with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And until we get more Native Hawaiians in there that have Native Hawaiians' best practices at heart, that's going to be a struggle. And having people in there who have a real understanding that what's best for Native Hawaiians is best for the state of Hawaii.
Trustee Ahuisa?
Whenever there's a bill to be heard, who's called up first when it involves OHA? Who's called up to the table first? Being a former rep, I know it's a department head. So our CEO, Kamanao Crab, he is the face of OHA. They don't see a trustee come up here and testify. Because I sat to various hearings. They don't call me, they call him. And then I have to kind of wait with everybody else to come up and say something. So it's just educate. I try to see them on the side, like Senators Miley, and try to explain to them why we're for or against a bill and what we think is, like, you know, the bill about term limits for OHA. I don't think we have a bad repair, like Shalee said. No, we have a good relationship with the legislators. We just have to educate them on why we need this and show them our new strategic plan and show that we're doing stuff too. I want to involve millennials. We got to get young people in here. And we can't have any old timers running OHA. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Isla, do you have anything to add? Do you have any specific ideas?
An awesome vision would be the executive director showing up at the budget hearings with all nine trustees sitting behind him. That would be an awesome vision. I'll disagree a little bit with my two colleagues here, because I think in the legislature right now, there's some genuine relationship going on with some legislators, but I think the legislature suffers from Hawaiian fatigue right now. You have DHHL, which has been at every legislative session for the last 3 years going, hey, there's this money that's supposed to be allocated to us, right? You have OHA asking for money. You have what appears to be Native Hawaiian causes that are holding up economic development in many places across the state of Hawaii. So we have to recognize that there is a Native Hawaiian fatigue right now in the legislature, and then find ways to address what is that perceived fatigue and get to the point of why legislators feel that way.
All the way for that. Turning our gaze now to governance, a key goal of the OHA strategic plan, the 2010-2018 OHA strategic plan, is to facilitate a process that would give Hawaiians the opportunity to create a governing entity that would define Native Hawaiians as a political group rather than a racial group. The benefit of such an entity would be its ability to provide Native Hawaiians with greater control over their destiny as they move toward self-determination and self-sufficiency. We spent at least 50 years trying to find an acceptable path to self-governance. The warrior leaders engaged in these activities are slowly passing. Those who live want to see self-governance achieved in their time. While continued education is helpful, is there someone among you with the bold vision of a process to bring the various factions of our community together, to kuka, agree, disagree, what have you, but ultimately to move us forward to attain self-governance in the immediate future? Trustee Ahuisa.
I'm reading, I printed it because I can't remember everything you said. Define Native Hawaiians as a political rather than a racial group, benefit of such a governing entity. The strategic plan from 2010 to 2018 was based on this, having the opportunity to create this governing entity, which is stated as one of the missions, well, the mission of the constitutional amendment. But I think there are more pressing issues than the governing, that entity. And so now the result of it from all these 8 years, which now we're into a new strategic plan, so that's what you're kind of trying to change. It's more for the beneficiaries themselves, who to me have been forgotten by, the homeless situation, diabetes, kidney, just the health issues, women issues. I mean, we have women with children, no husbands, and struggling out there trying to go to school. So I'm so glad OHA has a new grant program now that they can apply for. They don't have to go to get financial aid from the government. And all of these new things I see created, 15 minutes is a short time to answer all of this. But the strategic plan that we're talking about now, I can share a little bit. Yeah, it's more looking at how we can get the revenues into the hands, or the grants into the hands of our beneficiaries. We can help them. And the crisis, the subprime mortgage crisis, that did not help us at all. I have students, I have kids of Hawaiian ancestry that bought a house during that time. Their husband was a mechanic, and they could afford the house because there was no financial. Remember, they got a house. Everybody wants to own a home. Then what happens? The market drops. The house value drops. They try to refinance because they can't afford the monthly payment. They lose the whole house. They walk away instead of just staying there and trying to get the house when they can't get a refinance. All of that impacted Hawaiian people. Our credits are demolished. I'm sorry, but that's the reality of it. Thank you. So we're changing the strategic plan. Thank you.
Mahalo. And you're doing great, Trustee. Mr. Aila.
Could you repeat the question?
The crux of the question is, while continued education is helpful, is there someone among you with the bold vision of a process to bring our various factions together to discuss, however, kuka, agree, disagree, but ultimately to move us forward to self-governance, whether it's yourself or someone in the community?
I don't know of anybody that has that much stature that can bring people together right now. 30 years ago, you had some aunties that could call people and they would come together and they would discuss things very openly and very honorably. Today, it's much more complex world with social media and everybody wanting to have instant gratification. So OHA's role, when OHA was created, was to eventually become this entity that would represent Native Hawaiians. I don't know why we're so afraid, OHA is so afraid of continuing the movement to that ultimate outcome. I think the plebiscite that's before, I think people in the Hawaiian community is a start. I think OHA needs to continue to bring forth a nation. It's what will bring us. There won't be one leader that will bring us together. There will be a group of leaders that will bring us together because of the threat that is coming. The threat with Judge Kavanaugh, the threat with a lawsuit that is going to seek to remove protections for Native Hawaiians, both the small ends and the big ends.
Mr. Lee.
Bold action. such as 125 Native Hawaiians going up to Monowili and being asked to work on a governing document for a Native Hawaiian nation should that decide to stand up. It's exactly what we did 2 years ago. And it's important to note that that wasn't the first AHA that OHA has put on. It was the third. But for the first time ever, they were able to collaborate, sit down, listen to both sides, and agree and disagree and agree to disagree civilly. That is what has never happened before. And what I'm very proud of is that it was all streamed by Olelo live every day. And for the first time, people saw Native Hawaiians talking about self-governance, not yelling, not screaming, not fighting, but talking about self-governance. And they came to a conclusion, and they came up with a governing document, and they agreed to move forward. That's a huge step that in the 100+ years since the overthrow, that Native Hawaiians never took, and they finally took that big, giant step forward. That's a bold move.
Oh, yeah. Brother Rayton, would you like to move on to candidate questions?
Sure, absolutely. So we've invited each candidate to ask the other two candidates a question which must be the same and must not be of personal nature. The intent, shucks. The intent is to allow candidates to distinguish their views from that of their competitors on issues of importance to Native Hawaiians. May we begin with Mr. Lee. Please state your question for response by the other two candidates, who will be given 1 minute to respond.
Okay, so Bill, as the head of DLNR, and Lei, as a trustee, you both supported the expansion of Papahanaumokuakea, essentially giving the federal government control of about a third of the state, with Native Hawaiians having no or little gathering or cultural practicing rights, save the consumption of any catch that they might have within the sanctuary. How does this show support for Native Hawaiian rights and our Lahui's opportunity for economic sustainability?
Thank you for that question. Being that there's no federal recognition beyond 3 miles, there is no federal recognition of Native gathering rights. So the Native gathering rights within 0 to 3 miles still occurs. However, it's overlaid by this restriction, if you will, about bringing things back to the main Hawaiian Islands. And that was really based on the thought process of the kupuna who we listened to with the creation of first the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands coral reef ecosystem, then Papahanaumokuakea, and then the expansion. So it was really the wishes of the Native Hawaiians who had traveled up there, like Kavika Kapalehua, who saw the value of resources up there, but also recognized that we needed to have that interaction, that reciprocal relationship with those resources. So therefore, consumption in the monument is okay, but bringing back resources is not. And that's based on a traditional practice where you don't go into somebody else's ahupua'a and take their resources, that you take care of what you have in your backyard. So mahalo.
I voted aye with reservations, if you check the minutes. Because I was kind of torn with that when the Kauai people came and said, you know, they're coming into my fishing area, you know, then they kind of agreed that, oh, you can catch, but you have to eat what you catch. But I'm glad we did this, expanded to include all the way to Midway Atoll. There's a movie called Midway about all the albatross. Please watch the movie. It just breaks your heart. And you're so glad the federal government takes care. They have people go there and they take care of all these albatross and they feed them and the birds. It's their sanctuary. No other people can go there. Now we own it. It's part of us. All the little islands, Bill, I guess you know that all the islands extend for miles, thousands. I didn't know that until we approved that. The federal government now is responsible and has to take care of all of that. Okay, 10 minutes, 10 seconds.
Trustee, do you have a question for the other two members?
I don't get to respond to my question.
Yes, sir.
He does.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs met with the clubs on Kauai and the fishermen on Kauai, they had a very different idea of what sustainable fishing was. To them, sustainable fishing wasn't being able to go up there and catch and eat on your boat. To them, sustainable fishing was being able to go up into the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, which traditionally has fallen under the opua of Kauai. And I'll use a very specific example. They could take their boat up to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, catch 10 uku, bring it home, feed their family, feed their neighbors, and the leftovers take to a local restaurant to sell. That helps the economy, the local economy, it helps the local restaurant, and it allows that fisherman to provide sustainability for his family, to put food on the table, to pay for his mortgage or his rent, and pay for his kids' tuition. To those people on Kauai, that's what sustainable fishing was, which is a very different model.
Okay. Trustee Ahuisa, do you have a question for the other two members?
I guess I can talk about this. Sometimes I don't know I forget what's confidential and not confidential in OHA. This came up because of this conflict we have with the CEO. Most of the trustees, majority of them are saying he should not be called CEO, Chief Executive Officer. According to the Constitution and all the way back, being a state agency, they are called a director. Is there a difference, my question, is there a difference you see in what a CEO does versus a director of a state department and how they would respond back to a board of so-called trustees, which, I guess state department directors? I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Do I see a difference between the two? That would depend on the job description. Anybody can be called by any title. What it's going to come down to is the job description title that is put forth during the hiring process. To my understanding, the CEO's position, Kamana'o's position at OHA, mirrors what a department director would do within the legislature. So just because he's called by a different title doesn't change the actions and the duties that he does.
Okay, thank you.
In my opinion.
I think that's one of the, little idiosyncrasies, because OHA is a state agency, but it's trying to not be a state agency, and it's really designed not to be a state agency. So the fact that you have somebody with the title of a CEO, I think is its attempt at being more reflective of trying to be not like a government agency. Kamana'o, it's semantics. Whether he's a CEO or a director, he reports to a board. The board makes policy, and he implements policy. Every once in a while, the board's duties are to go back and check to make sure that he's implementing the policy as envisioned.
See, that's what I was trying to get at. Are we a state agency or aren't we? We cannot. They keep saying, oh, we're quasi. You cannot. When the state auditor comes in, he audits us that we're a state agency. We can't be so-called quasi. At one time, with the constitutional amendment, when 1978, we were considered the fourth arm of government. We are not considered a state agency. We had just as much power as the leg, the executive, and the judicial branch. And somehow it's morphed into a total different Office of Hawaiian Affairs where they've taken away the power, given it all to the legislature. That's my answer.
Okay, mahalo. Mr. Ayla.
My question is a simple one. Why do you suppose the other two incumbents are not here?
Oh, I can tell you why. I think that if I'm not here, then these two can talk more.
Keep it nice. Mr. Lee?
I can't speak as to why the two incumbents aren't here. The two other incumbents aren't here. I can say that this election cycle has seen the most amount of attention at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs election since its inception. And I can say that the incumbents that decided not to grace us with their presence tonight chose to not grace us with their presence at about 90% of this extended amount of exposure that we've had this past year.
Okay. Mahalo.
So I'll answer the
yes.
question very simply. I mean, to me, there's two possible reasons why. One, they don't see the value in presenting their ideas to the audience, to the voters, or two, they've made a cost-benefit analysis that it's not worth it to share their ideas with the voters. So that's my answer to that question.
Okay, mahalo for your candid responses. All right.
Let's turn our attention to programs and services. Native Hawaiians are among the largest population of homeless folks in the state. We've been grappling with this issue for quite some time. What kinds of programs, what kinds of specific programs and services would you advocate for to help Native Hawaiians who are homeless and to assure that they have access to affordable housing? Why don't we start with you, Trustee?
Well, I agreed with my colleague at another board we had where we should partner. We should partner with DHHL. For example, Kaka'akumakai, sitting there for the past 3 years I've been in there. The zoning, all of that under, they give us a land and yet we're under HCDA. HCDA has to approve everything we do. You're Deputy Director for DHHL, and so you brought up that if we partnered with you, that we could take the zoning, there, whatever they are approved, they don't have to, that's the quasi-state agency thing coming into play again. Oh, thank you.
Absolutely important. Mr. Ila.
Well, there's this, it's interesting, there's this fallacy that only the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is supposed to be responsible for all the homeless Hawaiians out there. The same sort of thought process that created the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and that 20% of the ceded land revenues, right, should go to the betterment of Native Hawaiians. Where does the other 80% go, right? So why has OHA been pushed into this little pocket of, we're giving you 20%, so you got to take care of all the Hawaiians, when in fact, the Hawaiians are supposed to have access to the other 80% plus the 20%. So there's no reason why Native Hawaiians can't be part of all the other programs in the state of Hawaii that deal with homelessness, transitioning them into affordable rentals and senior housing. The challenge is we've been put into a box and we need to get out of that box.
Mahalo. Mr. Lee.
There's a couple things. Homelessness and affordable housing in this day and age aren't necessarily the same problem. Homelessness back in the 70s when I was a child had predominantly to do with affordable housing. Today, the majority of homelessness has to do with mental health issues. I agree wholeheartedly with what Bill said. In fact, we were talking about this earlier tonight when we were sitting in the other room, that this isn't an OHA issue. Homelessness isn't a Hawaiian issue. Homelessness is a United States issue. And there are many programs out there, federal government and the state, that need to address and take care of these problems. I agree with Bill about that box. You go to the legislature and you talk about homelessness, and they look at you and you go, and they ask, are you Native Hawaiian? Yeah, and they go, oh, go talk to OHA. Well, why do I have to go talk to OHA? I'm still a tax-paying citizen of this state and of this country. You are supposed to take care of me, not just OHA. OHA should be giving me more. I should get what I am entitled to as a citizen of this state and of this nation, plus what OHA can give me.
Mahalo.
Okay, so let's continue to talk about issues. Health and education. What current challenges do we have and what opportunities exist out there right now that will help advance the health and education of our community? Well, let's give 1 minute to Mr. Ila.
Okay. The very same answer. Mm-hmm. We have education is one of the other 5 purposes of the ceded land trust, mm-hmm. right? So I would give you the exact same answer, that why would OHA be held responsible for the education of all Native Hawaiians when in fact it is the duty of the state of Hawaii as well as the federal government, because we are taxpayers. So the very same. Now, having said that, there's lots of federal money that comes this way for Native Hawaiian programs that actually aren't spent on Native Hawaiian programs that are priorities. And so within the Department of Education, there needs to be a stronger voice from OHA forcing the Department of Education to prioritize those monies on the programs that OHA identifies as important for Native Hawaiians.
Okay. excuse me. Mr. Lee, your response.
Like Bill said, we get a lot of money, federal money, for things like the Native Hawaiian Education Act. The things that OHA is going to need to concentrate on in the very near future are something that people at this table have talked about earlier this evening, and that's the challenges that are coming ahead. There are serious challenges coming from the federal government because of the new appointment to the Supreme Court and current cases that have just been litigated. The one in Texas by the federal judge in Texas addressing Native Americans' rights to adoption and he's claiming it's based on race. And the important thing about that is that that judge used Rice via Cayetano as his case law to rule on that. What does this have to do with the education question that you just asked me? Well, all of this money that comes here that OHA helps use and the state helps to use for Native Hawaiian programs for education is all going to be challenged and possibly taken away. And that's where OHA's future is going to be with regards to education and monies for education, is preparing for these battles that are on the horizon and on their way.
Okay, mahalo. Trustee?
Health or education? Talk about education right now.
Health and education.
Oh, health and education. Yes. Well, we used to get $40 million when Senator Inouye was alive. You know, he was head of Ways and Means, and he would add it into the budget. The Native Hawaiian Health Fund, you know, we would get 40 million or 20 million. Education, oh, this is sad because you got Republican president in there now. They're already changing the way the whole education system is run. Therefore, stipends to schools. Well, I want to deal more with the charter schools because that's where a lot of our Hawaiian immersion programs are, and this is like what happened with Kuokala and the volcano on the Big Island. I just feel for them because I did just come back from there, from Big Island, and we're helping Susie. It's just sad that OHA doesn't have, I wish OHA had more money. And my thing, I want to just interject this, is to up the revenue that we get. We have land, we have money, a $650 million trust fund, which is what my colleagues are going to learn when they get in, that we have all this money sitting there invested in the stock market now. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Pantheon, there's all these, I didn't know about that till I got into OHA. I thought, oh, we just had it here in the banks, like, you know, the state has it in First Hawaiian Bank and Bank of Hawaii. No, it's all out there, and we get interest of it. The market's been great lately. Take some of that, take more of that money out that we can use. You know, we keep it in there. You don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to drop later? It's kind of scary. We're at a frontier now at OHA. Everything is changing so fast. Wow. I know, yeah, sorry, she says pow, so I have so much more to add being in there, but I have to stop.
And we're at that time where we need to make closing arguments, or closing remarks. Closing remarks. So, so may we invite each of you now to make closing remarks, not to exceed a minute and a half. Let us first begin with Mr. Aila.
So you've heard me say this many times. There's this wave that's coming. It's a real wave. It's not a make-believe wave. It's not fake news. There's a conscious effort to remove Native Hawaiians from the history, from the judiciary, from the legislative history of the United States. Only in terms of any types of special political relationship. There are people in power that are going to base this on a race-based relationship. They're going to go after the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. They're going to come after the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. They're going to come after Native education. They're going to come after Native health. They're going to even come after, at some point, the ability to adopt our own children, as they just did to the tribe in Texas. And if people don't recognize this and we don't prepare for this, get the attorneys ready, understand what the legal arguments are, pray, because we're going to need all the help that we can get. Understand, one more thing, understand real quickly now, this woman's name, her name is Susan Combs, okay? She's the new undersecretary at the Department of Interior that is in charge of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. She's a very conservative, right-wing person. It's no mistake that she has just been appointed to be in charge of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands within the Department of Interior. So everybody needs to do their homework. We need to get ready. We need to get prepared. And we need to find a way to move forward together.
Okay, mahalo. Mr. Lee, your closing remarks.
You know, way back when Kamehameha didn't unify these islands by him and his warriors fighting separate battles. They came together and they stood as one and fought together as one. And this wave that Bill talks about, he's not kidding. None of us are kidding. It's real and it's coming. And if we as Native Hawaiians cannot stand together, we will not survive. Because we stood together 130 years ago, and we are where we are today. So we need to come together and stand together. The difference now, though, is we cannot do it alone. Everyone out there who thinks that OHA isn't for them, whether you're Native Hawaiian or non-Native Hawaiian, you moved to this state, or your ancestors moved to this state for a reason, and you stayed for a reason because you love Hawaii and what Hawaii stands for. And what is good for Native Hawaiians is good for the state of Hawaii. So if Hawaii is important to you, it's important for you to live here, for your kids, your grandkids to live here and to be able to afford and to stay here, then OHA is important to you. And you need to show up on November 6th and cast your ballot for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, whether you're Hawaiian or not. Mahalo.
Trustee Ahuisa, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks, I want to deal more with the renaissance that I find happening now. Because in my days, way back, we couldn't speak Hawaiian. I couldn't dance hula. You know, it's a whole different. I'm so happy. I want to talk positive things. So we have a renaissance going on. We have Olelo Hawaii. So we have a language. So we are a people. We have the Year of the Hawaiian, and that kind of took place because our Nai Aupuni thing really didn't, you know. So it kind of morphed into the governor says, okay, we're going to have the Year of the Hawaiian. We have these certificates saying what we did was wonderful and we got to perpetuate this. We have musicians. I talked about that before. A whole genre of Hawaiian music coming out from our young people. They write, they sing, they create. They get involved. They can speak the language. We have in court, interpreter, now a translator, approved. You know, we have to battle. Sure, we have to go through all of these battles in court, obstacles, I should call it. But we're getting it done. People are respecting us more. Even the Supreme Court stopped the Mauna Kea because I went up there and we got a hearing. We got it taken away, that, you know, the permitting thing, and now we're getting another chance to talk and work with Manoa about the management of Mauna Kea. So all of these things are happening. We have to be aware that some spiritual help, guidance is helping us in this direction. Sure, we're about the new U.S. Supreme Court, but hey, vote Democrat. Get them into the Congress. That's all I have to say, because if we don't do nothing, sit there and don't vote, don't grumble later. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Well, mahalo nui loa for all the mana'o that you shared with us this evening. Without question, being a trustee of OHA is daunting. It's a very challenging thing to awambo an entire nation of people, our hopes, our aspirations, our future. And I thank you and everyone who has run in this cycle and all those that have come before for attempting to find a way forward for our people. There's an old adage that a rising tide lifts all boats. And in order for our people to be successful, we need to have leadership such as yours representing us on OHA. And a successful, strong OHA leads to a successful, strong effort for our people, which leads to a successful, strong effort on behalf of all the people of Hawaii. And that's why it's very, very important that everyone across the state take the time to get educated and to vote.
I certainly can't top that. That was great. So, but again, mahalo to you folks for joining us tonight. Mahalo to our viewing audience and our audience in the studio here. Again, we want to just remind you that Election Day is just around the corner on November 6th. So please go out there and cast your vote. If you've gotten your absentee ballot, don't waste any time. Fill it out and cast your vote for any one of these good, fine candidates here tonight. Lastly, mahalo to the Olelo staff and to Royal Kitchens who supplied us with refreshments for tonight's panelists. Please visit the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus website at hawaiianaffairs.org and tell your friends about this Olelo program. Stay tuned for commentaries immediately following this program with Hawaiian Affairs Caucus members Rebecca Soon and Ken Farm. Mahalo.
Aloha everyone, welcome back.
Aloha.
We have with us Auntie Momi Khan. She's our fearless leader, the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus.
Aloha, Becky.
So glad that you're here backstage with us because
Aloha,
Auntie Momi is like always running around, doing everything, making sure all the pieces fit together, making sure everyone knows their kuleana.
Not only doing that, she does a lot of the work in the background that you don't see. Like when it comes to the scripts or anything like that, reports, Auntie Momi. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We actually have a wonderful Hawaiian Affairs Caucus, the Executive Committee. I say they're wonderful because they're committed to doing and to taking actions to try to move the Hawaiian community forward, trying to uplift our welfare, our standing in the community, being there where we can to address some of the big issues at the legislature. Working with the legislators. And I think also, you know, it's wonderful when you're a chair of something, when the members who constitute that governing board work cohesively together. I have learned that with all of the members on the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus Executive Committee. And I'll just give you a small example. And it is a little bit relevant to tonight.
Yeah.
I'll give you a small example. So one of our commentators couldn't make it. He called me 5 minutes before the program was to start. And so I immediately looked around and I said, Ken, you've done all the other jobs on here except one. So Ken, would you join Becky tonight? Now, as you know, it's not easy to do this. And without hesitation,
but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
Without hesitation, Ken said, sure, Auntie Momi. And then I went to see Juanita Kawamoto Brown and said, Juanita, Ken had to move. So from hospitality, would you mind doing the opening with me? And she looked at me and said, are you kidding? But good troop that she was.
Oh, she's perfect.
Yeah, it was good.
And
very good.
she was ready with the beautiful Noa Noa.
Yeah. Brought to you by Noa Noa.
You're also featuring some beautiful Noa Noa tonight as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, you talk about the connectivity, but I mean, there's an undertone there, right, of this idea of how a board works collaboratively together, even where, I mean, there's probably times that there's not complete agreement on everything.
Absolutely.
But how you work together.
Right.
What does that mean to you, and what does the caucus think that means in terms of OHA?
So I really think that much of it has to do with respect, and much of it has to do with what your motivation is and what your objective is. If your objective is to help our people, then that's what you're focused on, and you become and you have to be flexible in listening to the various ideas and moving us forward. In our own caucus, as you folks know, we don't always agree, right? Okay. But we look for solution. We look for a place that we can try to all agree. I also think that sometimes people in the community seem to hold Native Hawaiians to a higher standard than others are held to. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter which organization, which legislative body you work for. There will be differences. Differences, in my mind, strengthen us because it gives us good information. It either affirms what we believe, or we say, why, my God, you know, Ken has a good point. Becky has a good point. Maybe we better go and change our direction. So it's just, you know, having the ability to do that. I saw that tonight with the candidates. I actually feel very uplifted. because all of the candidates brought very excellent mana'o to the table.
Okay.
And if we listen to each other, if we get like, if a certain candidate gets elected, remember what these other candidates have to offer.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then, you know, maybe use what they said, right, to holo mo'as.
We hear that throughout political campaigns, right, where folks are borrowing ideas from one another, adopting those ideas, and sometimes it's seen as political strategy, but if we step away from it, what I'm hearing from you, Auntie, is, oh, no, this can actually be valuable to enrich whatever moves forward. If we instead think about this as an opportunity that we're putting in trustees who have kuleana over this really important body of rights, of land, of resources, of advocacy, that in fact, let's take the ideas from whomever they come from, so long as they're going to move our community forward.
Yes. What I also heard this evening is at least one or two candidates talked about how important it was to get the input from the people that they serve. So it's not all top down, that in fact, you know, you listen to the community. One of the big issues for me, as you folks all well know, is moving us forward to some form of self-governance. As you folks both know, and I think the public knows, there's too much at risk now in the environment we're in.
And we heard some of that just in this last session, right? There was a lot of discussion about some of the federal advances around conservative agendas that have really threatened Hawaiian rights, indigenous rights. You know, we heard one candidate talk about the recent Texas case and how that really infringes upon our indigenous ohana, right? And care for our children. And, you know, we also, though, heard some ideas that maybe it's not OHA's role to be the one putting forward the governance solutions, or even necessarily the vehicle to empower our community to have those conversations. What does the caucus think about that?
So I don't know what the whole caucus thinks, because we still have to have more of these discussions just among the caucus. I know what I think. And so for me, it's bringing us into a room, all sides, and let's just hash it out. It's not going to be a happy party-like situation, because we're talking hard issues, right? But get us in the same room. Let us look at each other. But I'm hoping let's try to be respectful, respectful of each other to help us to move forward, because if we don't, we stand to lose. The other thing I believe is that if any of us think there's a 100% solution, we're kidding ourselves. We'll never get the 100% solution. The legislature doesn't get a 100% solution.
That's right.
The Congress doesn't, right?
That's right.
So again, why should we hold this to a higher standard? So people have heard me say this to different groups who work on sovereignty or self-determination issues. I say, whoever can get to the goal first, I will be there to shake your hand. I don't care if it is through international recognition, through federal recognition. I just want us to be at the table, because right now we're the spectators, and because we're spectators, things happen to us, right? I'm concerned too about the potential loss of all of the funding that's coming in for education and housing, etc. I'm talking too much. Ken, your generation.
It is, you know, so I mean, you know, we talked about the last time, we talked about the importance of housing, education, and healthcare, and those are things that were added to our platform, you know, in our last convention, and the importance of having that. Not just looking at, you know, we do have aspects of, you know, kai and aina, water and land, but how does that, you know, work with those other three things, you know, that having that foundation laid for Native Hawaiians when it comes to that, so that they can grow from that, having those basic needs being met. And what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, if you don't have the roof over you, and you don't have food, and your children can be educated, I mean, those are hard needs that have to be addressed. But at the same time, you know, we need as a people, I think, to try to be influential in terms of how that is done.
And speaking of, I mean, being influential, we've talked a little bit tonight about ways to sort of access the legislature. We're here, there was some great commentary, I thought, on the last panel about, this idea of what is OHA's relationship to the state, right? What exactly is it, and how do we
I think we heard some of that too as well, in terms of how someone disagreed in terms of what OHA is. Is OHA a state agency? They're saying it's a quasi-state agency. It shouldn't be a state agency, so there's also still that as well.
And it really is empowered through the Article 12 of the Constitution to have autonomous, control over the resources on behalf of the Native Hawaiian community. And so OHA, I think, in many respects, is an opportunity for our many voices to be heard on issues, not only for our community, but for the state as a whole. And so when we talk about being 550,000 strong, something like that, we're not going to have 100% agreement on anything. What community with 550,000 people are going to have complete agreement? So we got to vote.
Well, I think since you brought up voting, and I wanted to, so we can address the audience here, is that, that really is, and you can agree or disagree, Auntie, that really is the voice. And we talk about that voice that we have is that voice of voting. Right. And if we don't have that voice of voting, people registering to vote, then they're not a constituency. If they're not a constituency, they're not taken seriously by the state or even by the elected officials. Your thoughts?
So I'm gonna say something about that. We have the question of a constitutional convention before us, and we had a panel a couple days, about a week ago. We had a panel that Olelo will be rebroadcasting, and the question was whether we would or should support a constitutional convention. And the majority said no, we shouldn't, because the environment is very toxic now, and I agree. But I would tell everybody out there, especially Native Hawaiians, you know what? Bring it on. If the 20% or so who are eligible to vote of Hawaiians come out and vote, especially when you look at less than 40% of the state voted. So if we all went out to vote, we could control the outcome.
And you know what? And we do vote. And people talk about Hawaiians don't vote, but you know what? There's no data to prove that. We know that we voted back before Rice v. Cayetano, that we voted in significant numbers for OHA. We know that we're extremely civically engaged as a community through our civic clubs, through Ahamoku, through a number of really critical
and not just we set on our laurels, but we try to keep going on as well. Not just.
So both of you are at the legislature all the time testifying on things, at City Council, at Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So November 6th is a general election, right? We want people to go out and vote. And even if you haven't registered yet.
Same-day registration.
That's right. So what does that mean, Ken?
So same-day registration means to you who haven't voted yet or decided to vote is you can go down to your, where you live, the closest bypass, where your address is, and then you can go do a same-day registration, and then you can get a ballot to vote. And like we talked about before, your voice is your vote. So, when we talk about voice over here, that voice is the vote that you do. And also, if you don't vote, that's a voice as well.
So if you want more information, olelo.org is where you can go to find additional filming. Share this with your friends and with your ohana. Visit the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus Facebook page and website with the Democratic Party of Hawai'i. Our current party chair, Kili'i Lopez, is Native Hawaiian. It's our little guy over here representing our party. And she was also the president of Olelo. So I want to, at one point in time, a huge shout out to this Olelo crew. Thank you to the backroom crew over here.
Absolutely, yes.
Honestly, Olelo has been such a critical partner all along. Mahalo to the Hawaiian Affairs Caucus members that helped to make tonight happen. All of this civic engagement is brought to you. Auntie Lemomi is always going to talk about it being an ohana, which it is, but her leadership is really critical. So mahalo, mahalo.
And I just also want to throw that there.
To everyone.
People wonder, sometimes tax dollars go support, public service like this right over here. Public broadcasting is very important. It's another voice that we hear
empowering
outside of
our voices.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Any last words, Auntie Lemomi?
No, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for tuning in, taking the time to be with us. Please share this broadcast with your family and friends. And like Ken and Rebecca have said, vote. Go out and vote. Exercise your power.
Mahalo.
Mahalo. Exercise your voice.
Vote.